Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Bad Luck Gamer, and today's gonna be a different kind of video. Typically, I mostly handle just TTRPG stuff. It's my hobby, it's what I enjoy. But today, I feel like it's important to mention the recent going-ons with Paizo. More specifically, they're partnering up with a company called BKOM Studios to make two new games using the Pathfinder IP, and I think this is important. It's important because the more people who get interested in this IP, the more people who are going to be willing to try out the core TTRPG that more or less started it all. Unlike a lot of other videos I've seen so far, not many people have really gone that deep into BKOM, and so I wanted to do a little bit more of an investigation before I give my thoughts on what kind of games we might be seeing and what we can or should we even be excited for. So, let's look into it, shall we? BKOM Studios was founded in 1996, though obviously the gaming industry has changed a lot since then, and a lot of their titles that they show on the site are not that old, only about a few years old. So, that being the case, what kind of games does BKOM Studios make? And the answer to that is a lot of games, a lot of different kind of games. So, let's look at actually what the studio is advertising itself as they're a company that more or less advertises themselves to whoever wants to make a game. They don't make games specifically for like their general studio. They're not like a Bungie or anything like that make a very particular kind of game and just do it better and better every time. Instead, BKOM Studios kind of just does a little bit of everything. They currently have 120 members over 3 offices, and they have 26 years of combined studio experience. 26 years, again, it was founded in 1996, so that makes sense. But obviously as well, a lot of their most recent projects, a lot of their most known projects weren't really recognized for a while. So that's important to mention. It says they've released 3,500 projects, which is a little crazy. And their general service type is everything. Games, apps, they make connected toys, they work on websites, they work on UX or UI services, they do marketing, live operations, and back-end operations, which means they're willing to pretty much partake in anything, and they've worked with a large number of companies up until this time, many of which are like Hasbro or Warner Brothers. They have Star Wars IP, so they work with Disney, and they've even done stuff for Dungeons and Dragons. So they're not completely unused to working with stuff that's related to the tabletop field. Granted, none of their games really are in that area. So obviously they've worked on a lot of projects, and they've worked on the back end of a lot of projects. And I think the majority of their history is they're a studio that gets offered certain kinds of jobs, like we want you to work on the UI of this game or what have you. And so they kind of partake in a part of it rather than making a whole game themselves, though they do have some games under their belt as well. Some of their most relevant games featured on their site is
What'd you say
Before Your
a
Eyes,
composer or an accountant?
Sunday Gold,
So, shut it! You lot are about to get an ass kicking.
Tales from Candlekeep Tomb of Annihilation, Overloot, And they did work on Age of Empires 4. Though, if you go to the Age of Empires 4 section on their site, you can see here that they worked predominantly on the UI integration and accessibility features of the game, meaning that most of what the game's mechanics or even what it looks like wasn't really up to them as much as they worked on making the game more accessible. Now, is that a small part? I don't think so. When it comes to a strategy game especially, the UI elements are incredibly important in how you interface with the game, and of course accessibility options are very important in gaming nowadays, but you can see here that they really didn't play that big a part in the game overall as far as like the mechanics or what you would expect from the game. They just kind of cleaned it up a little bit. What games they did work on though are like Sunday Gold, and Sunday Gold I think is one of the better games that they've developed on the overall studio, and it launched last year. And what it is a game that is very similar to Persona 5, or kind of like Persona style strategy combat, mixed in with puzzle elements and mixed in as well with kind of some themes from like Disco Elysium as far as like art style is concerned, as well as, you know, some cheeky, you know, fun comedy style thief humor. People always have these games that they, or these like IPs that they mention whenever it comes to this. I'm not good. I never really watched these kind of things, so I'm not 100% sure, but this game in particular is a turn-based combat. As you can see here, that each of the characters have certain abilities. They have these windows. If you play Persona, you can see a lot of the similarities. That's not necessarily a bad thing, though, as, you know, there's quite a lot. And when it comes to, like, their various investigations, you can see it's a lot of point-and-click style, but they do have some puzzle elements and a variety of other things as well, and some other interesting mechanics. And overall, this does look like a genuinely good game. Overloot is another one of their more accomplished games. It came out in 2019, and more or less what it is kind of like a auto battler, side scroller kind of deal, where your character's equipment degrades over time as you use it and you get hit. You can combine equipment to make them better, and you earn money. You manage a small keep, but mostly what it is this kind of auto battler function, right? As you can see, it's just your character sits on one side of the screen and you attack someone on the other side of the screen while you're trying to utilize various items in your inventory to help you succeed, whether it's to improve weapons or improve your armor or what have you. And honestly speaking, this is one of their more, I think, interesting games as far as their mobile platform is concerned. They also have some other platform games, and they have a lot of other games that are just kind of nothing. They did something for Yokai Watch, which is really cool, but it's really just an arcade game where you win prizes and you can look at yokai character cards, which is not very exciting, and which is why I didn't really mention it before, as it wasn't really much of a game as much as like an advertisement. But when it comes to Overloot, you can see here that they actually have an interesting concept, an idea for a game, and it's a lot of fun, and you can tell the art style is really good. They do have really good artists overall working on their games. But I'm sure you're more curious of Tomb of Annihilation, which is the closest we have to a TTRPG game in what they're showing off on their site anyway. This game actually came out in 2017, which is pretty crazy. I didn't know about this. But what the game is really about is it's a mobile, or it's a digital port, not mobile. It's a digital port you can get on Steam for the board game Tomb of Annihilation. And more or less what it is almost a complete port over from the board game, where you take these characters, you move them so many spaces, they have certain actions, they find loot that allows them to overcome these actions. It's, from what I've heard and what I've seen, a kind of more difficult game. as it's kind of in the style of board game of the difficulty is you're playing against the board game's AI. So it's not necessarily that easy. It does use some iconic characters like Dragonbait from the, Forgotten Realms kind of IP, and overall it doesn't look that bad. The characters, not necessarily the most flashy designed and not as stylized as some of their other works, but when you're working with another person's IP, you want to make sure that you're getting the art as close as you can, and I think they did pretty well. The game overall seems to work really well, and for the cost, I think it's really good. What kind of games are Pathfinder looking for when it comes to what we're doing with BKOM Studios? So we got a game coming out at the end of this year, and then another game that just started its production. My thought is that Paizo made this announcement once they kind of secured the deal on the second game. And this has probably been something that's been going on since the beginning of the year, and maybe even before, who knows. They do have a game that will be releasing later this year. But my thoughts on it are, we're going to get one mobile game and we're going to get one PC game. And we're going to get a mobile game that is going to be probably something that's very similar in a lot of ways to their other IPs. It's going to be some kind of strategy game, maybe a card game, using one of Paizo's other board games that they have out there. I think Goblin Firework Fight is probably what we're going to see on the mobile side, though they do have some other games coming out, like Pathfinder Revolution or Pathfinder Arena. And because those games are coming out soon, they're not out yet, it might be that these games are actually kind of paired with the board games. As we all know, board games do sell, but they just don't sell as well as like mobile games or anything like that. So this might be a smart kind of business move to produce a mobile game and a PC game that are kind of digital ports over from these two games. And then when they, release, then you'll have a game that like, oh, there's an actual board game of this. I'd like to try that out. And then they'll go and check it out. In fact, I do think there's a really strong chance we're going to see something like Pathfinder Arena showing up in one of these two titles, as it's kind of like a progressively difficult battles. You're playing a particular character, and as you play, you get more money, you can buy more equipment, and you can level your character up to get more skills in an ever increasingly difficult wave-based kind of game, which is very video gamey, honestly, and honestly something I could see coming out in either a mobile or PC port. There is a chance that the PC game could be something completely different. In fact, BKOM Studios is not very shy when it comes to trying out new kinds of games or new kinds of styles of games, and they've done pretty much everything. They got very talented people and very good artists, and so we could see something completely different from one of these titles. I imagine the one that's going to take longer, being the PC port, is going to be a much more expansive and interesting game, but to what degree, it's really hard to say. Because honestly, the Tomb of Annihilation is just a ported over game, but it is $15 on the Steam store, or $16 on the Steam store. Unlike a mobile game, which is like you buy it for $5 and it's just kind of a silly little game, which seems to be a lot more of their general modus operandi for those kind of games. Games that are very simple, easy, kind of repeatable, and something that doesn't take a whole bunch of development time to really produce. So I feel like by the end of this year, we're going to see a mobile game that is either going to be its own thing or based on like one of the board games that Paizo has or will be coming out with. And then sometime either end of next year or sometime first quarter in the next year, we're going to see a PC game that's going to be a little bit more expansive in some ways. And I feel like we're likely to get this sometime next year. BKOM Studios doesn't really seem to work on projects that take too many years to produce. And unfortunately, for those of you who are waiting for it, I don't think this is going to be like an Alcat level Pathfinder 2nd Edition strategy or RTS game. Not RTS. CRPG, there we go. which is something that I want personally, but that's just not what this studio works on. Not really. And even if they were, it would just be getting started now, and we wouldn't see it for a good handful of years. So, I don't think that's what we're going to see from BKOM Studios, is that's not what they tend to work on. They tend to work on, 1 to 2 year project games that they can put out on mobile or, for cheap on Steam. So that being the case, they're either going to be board game ports or maybe something different that Paizo has cooked up that we just don't know about. But that's going to be it for me. How'd you all like it? Do you think that this was a good enough look into BKOM Studios and maybe you have a better idea of what's going on? Let me know in the comments below. And of course, please subscribe. We're quickly on our way to 3K subs and the channel is growing every day and I'm just loving it. But no more chilling out for myself. Let's just end the video here. Thank you all so much for watching. Good luck with your games. Leave the bad luck to me. And I'll see you all next time. Bye.